The night everything shattered began with my wife collapsing into tears, pleading with me to take her to the hospital. Her ex had been in a terrible accident, and she clutched my arm like her life depended on it. "Please," she choked out between sobs. "I have to be there. I still love him." I didn't answer. I drove her. When we arrived, I watched her sprint through the hospital doors without so much as a glance back at me. Hours later, while she was at his side, I was at home packing my bags. By the time she returned, the apartment was stripped of me with only a note left on the counter. "Don't worry, he can have you now. Please stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like and sharing it with the people you care about." My name's Daniel Cooper. I'm 34, an ordinary guy who works long shifts, pays bills on time and doesn't ask for much out of life. For the last 5 years I've been married to Jessica. She's 32, a nurse, full of energy, the kind of woman who lights up every room. People love her instantly. I loved her instantly. We built a life together in a modest apartment, nothing extravagant, but it was ours. Or at least I thought it was. The night everything unraveled started like any other. I had just gotten home from work when Jessica's phone rang. She answered and I could hear her voice change, soft then trembling. A mutual friend told her that Ethan Miller, the man she dated before me, had been in a horrific car crash. I knew his name, of course. She never fully erased him from her stories, even years later. I thought it was harmless nostalgia. Turns out I was wrong. She turned to me, eyes wet, face pale, and whispered, "Daniel, I need you to drive me there." At first I hesitated. Why me? Why should I be the one to take her to another man's bedside? Then she broke. "Please, I need to be there. I still love him." Those words cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't confusion. It was raw truth spilling out in the heat of panic. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I grabbed the car keys and drove her in silence. The whole ride my chest felt heavy, but I kept my mouth shut. When we arrived, she bolted from the car like I didn't exist, sprinting through those sliding hospital doors. I stayed behind, watching her disappear into someone else's story, someone else's tragedy. Not once did she turn around to see if I followed. Not once did she think of me. By the time I got back to our apartment, the decision was already made. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't even sit down. I pulled out a suitcase, folded my clothes with steady hands, and left the life we'd built piece by piece. When everything of mine was gone, I scribbled a note on the kitchen counter. "Don't worry, he can have you now." That was all I needed to say. Hours later, while I was in a motel across town, my phone lit up with call after call, message after message. Jessica's voice on voicemail shook with desperation. "I didn't mean it, Daniel. Please, please come back." But I knew the truth. She'd chosen her side before I ever left that parking lot. Sitting in that motel room, staring at the dim yellow ceiling light, I couldn't help but think back to how Jessica and I even got here in the first place. We weren't always like this. For a long time I truly believed I had married my best friend. We met at a friend's barbecue, nothing glamorous. I was 30, quiet and reserved, the kind of guy who stood on the edge of the group with a beer in hand, just observing. Jessica was the opposite, laughing loudly, telling stories that made people hang on every word. When she noticed me standing alone, she walked right up, smiled in that effortless way she had, and started talking as if we'd known each other for years. I remember thinking this woman could pull me out of any shell. The early years were good, better than good. We'd cook together in that cramped little kitchen, burn dinner half the time and just laugh it off. On weekends she'd drag me out on hikes I never thought I'd enjoy, but somehow with her even the blisters felt worth it. Our wedding was simple, nothing flashy, just close friends and family. For 5 years I told myself I was lucky. I'd married someone who balanced me, who made life fuller. But even during the happiest stretches, Ethan's name lingered like an echo. Sometimes it was casual. She'd mention a funny memory from college and his name would slip in. Other times it was heavier, like when she'd say, "Ethan used to love this song," or "Ethan always thought I should try nursing." At first I brushed it off. Everyone has a past, right? She never hid him, never lied about knowing him, and I told myself that honesty meant I had nothing to worry about. Still, something gnawed at me. Whenever I'd point out that she brought him up too often, she'd laugh it off, say I was imagining things. "Daniel, you're my husband. He's just a memory." I wanted to believe that. God, I needed to believe it. So I swallowed my unease and let it slide over and over. Looking back now, I realized those were the cracks forming. Not huge enough to split us open yet, but always there, weakening the foundation. I saw it in the way her eyes softened when she talked about him, in the hesitation before she said, "Just a friend." I ignored my gut because loving her felt easier than confronting the truth. The accident ripped the blindfold off. In those few words, "I still love him," every ignored warning, every dismissed instinct came crashing down on me. It wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was the truth finally revealing itself, something I'd been too blind or maybe too hopeful to accept. Lying in that motel bed, I realized our marriage hadn't fallen apart that night at the hospital. It had been eroding slowly for years, and I had been patching it up with trust she hadn't earned. Jessica didn't betray me in a single moment. She'd been betraying me quietly, bit by bit, long before Ethan's car ever swerved off the road. The morning after I walked out, I woke up in the motel with the kind of clarity that feels like a hangover without the drinking. My phone was still buzzing, Jessica's name lighting up the screen again and again. Missed calls, long texts, voicemails. Her voice breaking as she begged me not to give up on us. Each one started the same, "Daniel, please." I couldn't bring myself to play them all the way through. I didn't need to. Nothing she said could erase what I'd heard with my own ears. The strange thing was I didn't feel rage. I thought I would, but instead there was just this hollow stillness inside me. 5 years of marriage, and now I felt like a stranger to the woman I used to think I knew better than anyone. I sat at that cheap motel desk, staring at the wallpaper peeling in the corner, and wondered how long she'd been lying to both of us, pretending she had moved on, pretending she had chosen me. Around noon, I drove back toward our apartment to grab the rest of my things. My stomach twisted as I turned into the parking lot, half expecting her car to be there. It wasn't. Relief and bitterness hit me at the same time. I hauled the last of my clothes and boxes into my trunk, the silence of the place hitting harder than I thought it would. The bed we shared, the couch where we watched movies, the table where we ate dinner. It all felt like props in a play that had closed overnight. As I was leaving, I noticed the light on the answering machine blinking. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the room, frantic. "Daniel, I didn't mean it the way it sounded." I panicked. I wasn't thinking straight. Please don't leave me. I love you. You're my husband. He doesn't mean anything anymore." Hearing it only made me colder. If she could tell me, "I still love him," with such conviction in the moment, then these desperate backpedals were just damage control. Back at the motel, I listened to one voicemail she'd left earlier that morning. Her words stuck in my chest. "It was just a slip, Daniel. Please don't throw everything away over one mistake." One mistake. That's what she called it. I thought of her sprinting into that hospital, how she didn't even glance back to see if I was coming with her. I thought of how her voice cracked when she said she loved him, how natural it sounded on her lips. That wasn't a mistake. That was truth. And somewhere in that realization the first real thought of revenge crept in. Not the dramatic kind, not shouting or smashing things. No. Something quieter, sharper. She wanted to erase what she'd said, rewrite it as panic. But I knew better. She wanted Ethan so badly, then fine. He could have him. But she wasn't going to keep me or the life we had, or the safety net I had built for both of us. If she chose him, then I'd make sure she understood the cost. A few days passed before I saw Jessica again. I had been staying at the motel, keeping my distance, ignoring most of her messages. But eventually, I knew I'd have to go back to the apartment one last time to collect the rest of my belongings. Things too bulky for the first trip. When I unlocked the door, I wasn't surprised to find her there waiting. She was sitting on the couch, hands twisted in her lap, eyes red from crying. The moment she saw me, she stood up fast, like she'd been rehearsing this moment over and over. "Daniel," she breathed, rushing toward me. "Please just listen." Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't answer. I started gathering the remaining boxes from the closet. She followed me, hovering so close I could feel her shaking. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded that night," she said, her words tumbling out too fast. I was in shock. I didn't even know what I was saying. "Ethan was part of my past, that's all he is. You're my husband. You're the one I chose." I set the box down, finally looking at her. Her eyes were wide, desperate, her makeup smeared. "You didn't slip, Jess," I said flatly. "You meant every word. You didn't even think about me that night. You ran to him like I was invisible." She flinched, shaking her head. "No, Daniel, it wasn't like that." I panicked. "He almost died and I just blurted it out." I watched her struggle, watched her scramble for excuses, and then I asked the question that had been sitting on my chest for years. "Did you ever really stop loving him?" For a second she froze. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. That hesitation, that single beat of silence, was my answer. And then she tried to patch it over, stammering, I mean, I had the what's I guess, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. I laughed bitterly. What is right? I picked up the last box and walked toward the door. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. You wanted honesty, Jess? Here it is. You never got over him. And I'm done competing with a ghost. She broke down in tears as I left, but I didn't turn back. Not this time. Driving away from the apartment that day, I felt lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter because I'd finally said the words I'd been choking on. Heavier because now there was no illusion left to cling to. The marriage was over. But the more I replayed everything in my head, the hospital scene, her begging, that tiny pause before she admitted she still had what-ifs about Ethan, the more I realized walking away wasn't enough. She had broken me with the truth, and I wasn't going to let her walk away untouched. I thought about Ethan lying in that hospital bed. From what I'd heard, he was in rough shape. Broken ribs, shattered leg, internal injuries. There was talk that he might not walk the same again, maybe not even work for months. And Jessica? She was practically living at his bedside. She had chosen her side and it wasn't mine. That's when the idea started forming. She thought she could have both. Comfort from me when she wanted it, passion for him when she missed it. I decided she'd end up with neither. I wasn't going to scream or hit or make a scene. My revenge would be quieter, smarter, something that lasted longer than a fight. First step was financial. Jessica and I had joint accounts, shared bills, everything tangled together. I'd always been the one to manage the money, the responsible one. She liked to spend new clothes, dinners with friends, little luxuries here and there. She never worried about the future because she knew I had it covered. That was about to change. I met with a lawyer, explained everything, and he told me exactly what to do. Transfer what was mine, close joint accounts, protect myself before she had a chance to dig in. By the time she realized what was happening, she'd be standing on air. The second step was truth. Jessica was telling everyone, including her parents, that it had been a mistake, a slip of the tongue. I wasn't about to let her rewrite the story. If she wanted to claim panic, then I'd make sure people knew what I heard, exactly how I heard it. Not twisted, not exaggerated, just the raw words. I still love him. The last piece, the one that gave me the most satisfaction, was patience. I wouldn't cut her off right away. I'd let her keep trying, keep begging, keep dangling excuses in front of me. The longer she fought to reel me back in, the sweeter it would be when she realized she'd lost. I wanted her to feel that sick drop in the stomach, the way I had when she sprinted into that hospital without a second glance. Revenge wasn't going to be a single strike. It was going to be slow, deliberate, and final. She'd wake up one morning thinking she still had me as an option, only to discover the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. And when she looked around for someone to catch her, she'd realize Ethan couldn't either. The plan didn't take long to set in motion. A week after I last saw Jessica, I decided to pay a visit to the hospital. Not for her and not even for Ethan, really. I wanted to see the situation with my own eyes, strip away any illusions. Part of me wondered if she'd even notice me walk in. When I got there, I asked the front desk for Ethan Miller. They told me his condition was stable, though he'd be in recovery for months. Broken bones, internal bleeding, surgeries lined up. He wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. I thanked them and made my way down the hall, but I stopped short when I saw the room from a distance. Jessica was inside, sitting by his bed, holding his hand. Her head rested on the mattress like she belonged there. I didn't step inside. I just stood there long enough to feel the knife twist deeper. It wasn't panic or slip-of-the-tongue devotion. It was love. Or at least whatever version of love she still reserved for him. On my way out, I bumped into a woman carrying a coffee tray. She looked exhausted but familiar somehow. She introduced herself as Claire, Ethan's sister. When I mentioned I was Jessica's husband, her eyes widened a little, like she wasn't sure how much I knew. After a pause, she sighed and said quietly, "I guess you probably already figured it out, huh?" I played dumb, shrugged. "What do you mean?" Claire gave me a long, searching look before finally saying, "Jessica told Ethan she never stopped loving him. She called the accident a sign. She said it felt like fate pulled them back together." She shook her head. "Honestly, I don't know what that means for you, but I thought you should know." The words hit harder than I expected. Hearing it secondhand was somehow worse. It wasn't just a slip in front of me, it was something she'd confessed openly to him. She didn't stumble into it. He meant it. She declared it. I thanked Claire, kept my expression steady, and walked out of the hospital. But inside, something in me hardened for good. Jessica had been trying to paint me a picture of panic, a heat-of-the-moment blur. But here was the evidence. She had doubled down when I wasn't there, when she thought I wouldn't find out. That night, I sat in the motel room with my phone in hand, scrolling through the voicemails I hadn't listened to. Her voice cracked over and over. I don't love him, Daniel. I love you. But now I had proof she was lying through her teeth, proof from someone who had no reason to invent it. That was when the second stage of revenge became crystal clear. She thought she could gaslight me into believing I'd misunderstood her. She thought she could bury the truth under tears and desperation. But I had her words, Ethan had her words, and now even his family had heard them. All I had to do was decide who else would. Once I had the truth confirmed, the rest became strategy. If Jessica wanted to throw away our marriage for Ethan, fine. But she wasn't going to drag me down with her. The first thing I did was set up another meeting with the lawyer. He was an older guy, sharp eyes, the type who had probably seen 100 cases like mine. I laid out the situation. The accident, her confession, the fact that we were tied financially. He listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair. You've been the responsible one, haven't you? He asked. I nodded. He spends. I save. He smirked. Then you're in a good position. Close out your joint accounts before she drains them. Transfer everything that's yours into a separate account. Protect your credit. Start the divorce paperwork now. Don't wait. By the time she realizes what's happening, she'll already be behind. It felt almost surgical the way he laid it out. No drama, no raised voices. Just steps to secure myself while she was too distracted by Ethan to see the ground shifting beneath her. That's exactly what I wanted. That night I went online and started moving the money. Every paycheck I'd deposited over the years, every careful saving I had done, I separated from the joint account. She wouldn't be able to swipe a card on a whim anymore. By the end of the week, her balance was a shadow of what it used to be. While I worked, the messages kept pouring in. Jessica's tone had shifted. At first she was pleading, desperate. Now she was angry. You can't just disappear, Daniel. We need to talk. You're my husband, we're supposed to fight for this. I didn't respond. Let her talk to the silence. The second step was paperwork. The lawyer helped me file for divorce quickly, citing irreconcilable differences. It wasn't about making her look bad in court. I didn't need to. The truth was bad enough. But I made sure everything was documented. Her voicemail admitting she still loved Ethan, Claire's statement about what she told Ethan in the hospital. If Jessica tried to fight me for assets, I'd have all of it ready. The best part was she had no idea. I let her believe I was still on the fence, that maybe I was cooling off and thinking about reconciliation. I answered one of her calls finally, kept my voice flat but not hostile. I don't know what I want yet. I just need space. It was a lie, but it bought me time. I could almost hear the relief in her breath when she said, Take all the space you need, Daniel. I'll wait. What she didn't know was that while she sat at Ethan's side, waiting for me to come back, the papers were already moving through the system. My accounts were secured, my lawyer had everything lined up, and soon Jessica would realize she hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the safety and stability I had built for both of us. And that, more than anything, felt like justice. By the time the divorce papers were in motion, I knew it was only a matter of time before Jessica figured out she was losing control. But I wasn't content with her just knowing the truth privately. She had been lying to everyone else, telling friends, telling her parents, probably even telling herself, that her words at the hospital had been nothing but panic. I decided she didn't get to live behind that curtain anymore. If I had to carry the weight of her betrayal, then so would she. Her parents had invited us over for dinner one Saturday, a standing tradition we'd kept through most of our marriage. Jessica called me that morning, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. Please come, she said. They're worried about us. We can talk it out there. They just want to see we're okay. I agreed calmly as if I was willing to play along. Inside, I was already planning my move. When I walked into her parents' house that evening, Jessica's relief was visible. She tried to touch my arm, smiling nervously like we were still partners. I pulled away. We sat at the table, her mom serving roast chicken, her dad asking polite questions about work. Jessica kept cutting me quick glances, hoping I'd jump in, smooth things over. I stayed quiet until her dad finally said, So, what's really going on between you two? Jessica jumped in before I could answer. We've had a rough patch, but we're working through it. Things just got a little emotional with everything happening. But Daniel knows I love him. She looked at me like she was daring me to contradict her. I set my fork down, pulled my phone from my pocket and hit play on a recording. Her voice filled the dining room, raw, desperate, undeniable. Please, I need to be there. I still love him. Silence fell over the table. Jessica froze, her face draining of color. That, I said evenly, wasn't panic. That was honesty. Her mother gasped softly, her father's jaw tightening as he looked at her. Jessica scrambled, words tumbling out. It wasn't like that, I swear. I didn't mean. I cut her off, turning to her parents. She's been telling you it was a mistake, but it wasn't. She's been sitting in Ethan's hospital room every day, holding his hand, telling him she never stopped loving him. I didn't want to believe it myself, but his own sister confirmed it. Jessica's mother shook her head in disbelief. Jessica, is that true? Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Her father leaned back, silent, disappointed in a way that said more than anger ever could. I stood up, sliding the phone back into my pocket. I wanted you all to know the truth. I'm done being the only one carrying it. Without another word, I walked out, leaving Jessica crumbling under the weight of her own lies. After that dinner, things between Jessica and me shifted from desperate pleading to cold silence. She didn't call as often, and when she did, her voice carried more edge than sorrow. It was as if she finally understood that I wasn't bluffing, that the rug had already been pulled out from under her feet. The divorce paperwork was making its way through, and every day that passed, the distance between us grew more permanent. When the papers finally arrived at her door, she called me immediately. Daniel, please don't do this, she begged. We can fix it. We've built a life together. You can't just throw it away over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, the bitterness slipping through my calm. Jessica, you didn't just say it. You lived it. You chose him over me every time you walked into that hospital and sat by his side like his wife, not mine. She started to cry, but I didn't let it sway me. For once, her tears weren't mine to clean up. Sign the papers, I told her, and hung up. The process was quick, thanks to the lawyer's preparation. Within weeks, our marriage was officially dissolved. She lost more than just me. She lost the financial safety I had always managed, the shared home she thought she could rely on, and the illusion that she could keep both men orbiting around her. I made sure my accounts were protected, my credit untouched. She, on the other hand, was left scrambling. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard Ethan's recovery was rocky. He was frustrated, bitter, dependent on help. He resented the constant attention, even from Jessica. She had imagined some grand reunion, but the reality was uglier. She wasn't walking into a fairy tale. She was chaining herself to someone broken, angry, and unwilling to be the man she used to remember. For me, life felt strangely quiet. I had my own apartment now, nothing special but peaceful. I cooked for one, slept without tension, woke up without wondering who Jessica was texting. There were moments of loneliness, sure, but they were cleaner than the hollow loneliness I'd felt inside our marriage. One evening she showed up at my door. I didn't let her inside. She stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "He doesn't want me, Daniel. Not like that. He pushes me away. I need you. Please, I can't do this without you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't asking for me. She was asking for the comfort, the safety net, the version of me who always cleaned up her messes. That man was gone. "I'm not your backup plan," I said quietly. "Not anymore." And then I closed the door. For the first time since it all began, I felt something close to peace. After I shut that door on Jessica, the silence in my apartment felt different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a motel room where betrayal was still fresh. This silence felt earned, almost cleansing. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't scanning conversations for hidden mentions of Ethan, or second-guessing if my wife was comparing me to a ghost from her past. I was just alone, and strangely that was enough. Jessica didn't stop calling right away. She left messages at all hours. Some angry, some begging, some almost incoherent. "Daniel, you're punishing me for something I didn't mean. Please, I'm sorry. I need you." Other times she snapped, telling me I'd regret walking away, that I was heartless. But every voicemail ended the same way, with a pause, a soft whimper, and her whispering, "Please come back." I never answered. I deleted them one by one until her voice became background noise, static I could tune out. What had once gutted me now barely registered. That was the revenge I hadn't even planned. Indifference. She could cry, scream, beg. It didn't matter. The man who used to rush to fix everything for her was gone. Meanwhile, word got around. Her parents knew the truth now, and while they didn't disown her, the disappointment in their voices lingered. Friends who had once admired our marriage kept their distance, unsure of what to say. Jessica had wanted to rewrite the story to make me the overreacting husband, but she couldn't anymore. Too many people had heard the recording, too many knew her confession. The perfect image she clung to had cracked wide open. As for Ethan, the fantasy collapsed faster than I imagined. His recovery was long and grueling, And the reality of being cared for day in and day out wasn't romantic. He grew bitter, snapping at Jessica, resenting her hovering presence. What she once saw as fate quickly turned into obligation. She hadn't run into a love story, she'd shackled herself to a man who didn't want her pity. I didn't gloat, didn't reach out, didn't need to. That was the beauty of it. My revenge required no theatrics. Just distance, silence, and the slow unraveling of the lies she told herself. She had traded stability for a fantasy, and in the end she lost both. One night, weeks later, I listened to her last voicemail all the way through. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "Daniel, please. He doesn't want me. I made a mistake. I need you. You were the only one who ever really loved me. Please just give me one more chance." I sat there, phone in hand, letting the words hang in the air. Then I pressed delete. No hesitation. She had made her choice the night she ran to him. And I made mine the moment I walked away. Do you think I was right to leave, or should I have stayed? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.